Hey everybody, it's Mr. Fussell from Business 101. Today we're going to be going over legislation and business. Now, bear in mind, this is quite a long one, and it's not the most interesting subject matter, so I encourage you to just plow through it and, really try and take it in as best you can. Maybe even watch the video in a couple different sittings, so it doesn't feel like too much to take in at once. And it won't maybe bore you out halfway through the video if you watch it in a couple different sittings. But let's jump in, shall we? Okay guys, so legislation and business. The government uses legislation to regulate businesses' behavior and prevent them from exploiting people. There are laws to protect consumers who buy from businesses and workers employed by businesses. Principles of consumer law, quality, and consumer rights. So, the term consumer law refers to any piece of government legislation designed to protect consumers from poor quality products and poor business practices. In the UK, there are two pieces of legislation that form the basis of consumer rights. Those are the Consumer Rights Acts and the Consumer Protection Act, okay? So, the Consumer Rights Act. This act replaced and updated previous legislation. It was also the first consumer legislation to include digital products. It deals with transactions between a seller and a buyer and is designed to protect consumers from unfair and dishonest business practices. It covers the product or service, returns, repairs and replacements, and delivery. So, how does this affect goods? Goods must be described accurately, so businesses should not describe goods and services in any kind of misleading way. Goods must be fit for purpose, so they must do what they are designed to do. And the goods must be satisfactory quality minimum, so goods should not be damaged or faulty when sold as new. How about services? So services should be supplied under minimum standards, which include the service provider must use reasonable care and skill in delivering the service. Any written or verbal information provided by the supplier is binding. The service must be provided in a reasonable time unless agreed otherwise, and the service must be provided for a reasonable price if the price is not agreed beforehand. So let's talk about returns. Under certain circumstances, consumers can reject a product, excluding digital products, and return it for a full refund within 30 days of taking ownership of it. They can do this if the product is not as described, unfit for purpose, or not of satisfactory quality. Where a fault develops within the first 6 months, it is presumed that the fault was there when the consumer took ownership of the product, unless the business can prove otherwise. After 6 months, the responsibility for proving that fault was there when the consumer bought the product falls on the consumer. Repairs and replacement. So, after 30 days, a consumer must give a business one opportunity to repair or replace any goods, including digital goods, that are not as described, unfit for purpose, or not of satisfactory quality. If the repair or replacement is unsuccessful, the consumer can claim a refund or price reduction. So now let's move on to delivery. So, delivery should usually take place within 30 days, unless agreed otherwise at the time of sale. The business selling the goods remain responsible for them until they are in the possession of the consumer. Failure to deliver within 30 days or by the agreed date gives the consumer the right to cancel the purchase and receive a full refund. So now let's go into a bit more detail about the Consumer Protection Act 1987. So this act is designed to ensure that products are safe. It makes businesses that produce rather than just sell liable for any damage caused by poor quality or defective products. The producer is an individual or a company who puts their name or trademark on a product or has imported it into the European Union in order to sell it on. So it gives anybody the right to claim against the producer of a product for any damage caused by a manufacturing defect. Principles of employment law, okay? The term employment law refers to any piece of government legislation designed to protect employees from exploitation, okay? That's a good definition to remember. In the UK, there are 4 areas of employment legislation that form the basis of employee rights in the workplace. This is recruitment, pay, discrimination, and health and safety. And I'm sure you've heard of all of those things. So let's go into a little bit of detail about each of those right now. Recruitment. This legislation outlines what employers can and cannot do when recruiting staff, and what their responsibilities are once a job offer has been made. Pay. This legislation covers pay and is designed to ensure that the pay workers receive is about a set minimum level. Is above a set minimal level. So you probably would have heard of such things as the minimum wage and the living wage. Now, these are pieces of legislation that have been brought in due to employment law, okay? And those are designed to make sure that nobody is paid below those rates, okay? Now let's talk about discrimination. So this area of employment law is designed to ensure that employers treat all people fairly. So there's no bias in recruiting or in employing certain individuals. And then health and safety. So this is legislation around health and safety. This is designed to keep employees safe when they are at work. Okay, so this is all things to do like hard hats. If you're working in construction, that's a classic health and safety. Standing on ladders in an incorrect way. There's lots of health and safety procedures if you work in a warehouse. So there's lots and lots of sections to each of these 4 main banners, if you will. So let's go into them now in a little bit more detail. So let's do recruitment. When recruiting new staff, employers need to make sure that they are complying with any relevant government legislation during each stage of the process. While recruiting new staff, so these are bits of legislation now that are active when recruiting new staff. Okay, so during this stage, businesses must consider the Equality Act 2010. This requires employers to treat people fairly and not discriminate in any way. This means, for example, that a business cannot advertise a vacancy as only being open to people under the age of 30, because that would be discriminating based on age. Recruiting involves collecting and using personal data, so businesses also need to ensure they're complying with the Data Protection Act 2018. So all candidates applying for a job must give permission for their personal information to be used. They can also ask the business to delete any information that the business holds on them. Okay, so for example, if they were unsuccessful in the application, they can then ask them to delete that data. Okay, so once new staff have been recruited, so this is for when you are now at a place of employment. Okay, so when an employee starts a new job, the Employment Rights Act 1996 requires that they are provided with a written statement outlining the details of their employment within 2 months of them starting. This written statement must include basic details such as the job title and place of work, the date the employment started, the hours of work, and the salary or wage. Let's talk about the Pensions Act. So the Pensions Act 2008 may require new staff to be enrolled into a pension scheme. Both the business and the employer will make contributions to the scheme. So this is where you basically pay money into a pot as you work, and so does your employer. And when you hit your retirement age, this then opens up to essentially finance the remainder of your life. Pay. There are 2 significant laws that determine what businesses must and must not do when it comes to paying their workers. These are the National Minimum Wage, as we mentioned earlier, and the Equality Act. So, what must businesses do? Under the National Minimum Wage Act 1998, all businesses must pay their staff a minimum hourly rate. There is no exemption for small employers or discounts for geographical areas. The aim is to increase the incomes of low-paid workers. The rates are set each year by the government. So for people aged 16 to 24, this is called the national minimum wage. It varies according to different categories, so under 18, over 18, over 21, and apprenticeships. There's different set standards for each of those different age groups. And for people aged 25 or over, it is called the National Living Wage. So what can businesses not do? So under the Equality Act 2010, this makes it illegal for a business to pay people different rates of pay if they are doing the same job or similar jobs. So this means that, for example, a business cannot pay a male member of staff more than a female member of staff if they are employed in the same role. Which brings us on to discrimination. The Equality Act 2010 is designed to prevent discrimination on several grounds. These grounds are called protected characteristics and include age, disability, gender reassignment, marital status, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion, sex, and sexual orientation. Now, I'm not going to read all these out because there's quite a bit to read there, but please do pause the video, write these down, remember them, take a screenshot, whatever it is you do to memorize, these kind of revision videos, do that now, okay? And then we'll be moving on to the next slide. Health and safety. In order to prevent accidents and keep workers safe, the Health and Safety at Work Act, which is in 1974, that's when that act came out, outlines the responsibilities that both employers and employees have in keeping the working environment safe. Employers should provide staff training, safety equipment, including tools and clothing where appropriate, drinking water, toilets and suitable washing facilities, first aid equipment, and employees are expected to complete training provided by their employer. They're expected to use the safety equipment tools and wear safety clothing and take responsibility for their own safety in the workplace, and also to report any risks to their employer so that they can act on them. In addition, the Working Time Regulations, 1998 and then amended in 2003, place limits on the number of hours that employers can expect staff to work. So they also specify that breaks employees are entitled to, and the regulations ensure that staff A, can only be asked to work on average up to 48 hours per week, B, are entitled to a minimum of 5.6 weeks holiday per year, have a minimum of 1 day off each week, and have at least 11 consecutive hours off in every 24-hour period. Okay, so, and also so that they can take a 20-minute break when working more than 6 hours. In order to prevent accidents and keep workers safe, the Health and Safety at Work Act outlines the responsibilities that both employers and employees have in keeping the working environment safe. So let's talk about costs. Businesses must comply with government legislation, but this means that they incur a range of additional costs in terms of time and money. Okay, so some of these costs are incurred because of the time required to produce documents, follow procedures, and make sure legal obligations are in fact met. Okay, so here again, I'm going to say pause, write down, take your screenshot, type up your notes, read these acts and the example of additional costs that they provide to businesses. Okay, so we have the Health and Safety at Work Act, the Consumer Protection, Employment Rights, National Minimum Wage, Working Time Regulations, Pensions, Equality, Consumer Rights, and Data Protection Act. So what are the consequences of a business not meeting these obligations? Okay, so providing products and services that meet or exceed legal requirements will gain a business a good reputation for reliable and trustworthy products. As its reputation grows, sales are likely to increase and more customers will be attracted to the brand, and with that as well, they will get word of mouth marketing, which is the best kind of marketing, is the marketing that will convert the most amount of people per person advertised that way too. Okay, so that is the best type of marketing you can hope for as a business. If it's good, it has to be good. Complying with employment law means that staff will feel more confident that they will be safe at work and that their employer takes its responsibilities seriously. This can bring a number of benefits. Staff are more likely to work harder, which results in a business being more efficient. Staff are more likely to stay working for the business, which reduces recruitment costs, so they're more likely to stay with the business that they enjoy working for and that meets its obligations. And the business is more likely to gain a good reputation, which makes it easier to recruit new staff. So what are the consequences of not meeting these obligations? Okay. So businesses that choose not to comply with the law are likely to face a number of serious issues. So number one, employers could find themselves in court of an employment tribunal, which means they have to pay expensive legal fees. Furthermore, employers may have to pay fines and compensation if they break employment laws. Furthermore, the business's reputation could be damaged by bad publicity, which could result in a loss of sales and staff and positive marketing and PR. Suppliers and stakeholders may also be reluctant to be associated with businesses that do not meet their obligations. Now, thank you so much, everybody, for listening to that lesson. It is a very lengthy one. It is a very complicated and long one with a lot to take in, which is why I appreciate it all the more for those of you that got to the end of the lesson. Thank you so much for watching. If there is any questions that you have that have not been answered yet, please do leave them in the comment section down below. Leave a like on the video if this helped you in any way whatsoever, and please do subscribe to the channel for more business lessons in the future. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.